Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babylon 9's video with myself, Mike, and Sloth today. Another player link, another breakdown. This one's interesting. Another striker or forward target being linked with Samu from La Liga, an Atletico Madrid player who was on loan at Alvarez last season. And yeah, it's saying that West Ham was the Premier League club rumored to have offered them 29 million euros fixed with 10 million in add-ons. So around the 40 million euro deal for a 20-year-old who got a pretty decent return last season, lads, with 9 goals and 1 assist in 35 appearances for Alaves in La Liga. So definitely someone that's showing potential. And we're going to get into his characteristics and his key attributes in a second, because it seems like a very interesting one for West Ham to be linked with some of his attributes. So yeah, when you first saw this link, guys, with Samu, what were your thoughts? And is it a link that makes sense with the new Lopetegui era?
For me, it makes sense. We mentioned him a couple of times when we talked about Boniface and others. We kind of mentioned in passing that Samu is maybe the type of player, because we know we've looked at Boniface and we like Boniface, but obviously his price was so high. And Samu certainly fits that profile as an alternative. Also younger, without injuries as well. The price is slightly extortionate. However, again, you are paying for potential and the player they are now. And when you bound that together, it slightly makes sense. But we'll go into that in more detail. But for me, it's a positive step, and it shows that we are looking for a true centre forward. And if you look at the moment, proper centre forward seems to be having a slight resurgence in certain teams, and also in the possession team as well. That focal point who can essentially take the defenders away.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think as well, as you mentioned, that focal point, he's someone that's 6'4", still only 20, as you mentioned, so plenty of room for growth there. 9 goals and 1 assist in 35 appearances for Alaves last season. That's a pretty good return for a 20-year-old striker who, yeah, he's been part of the under-19s for Spain, the under-21 team now for Spain. So he's progressing on the right track. And I think that's probably why Atletico Madrid bought him, last summer from Girona for about 6 million euros and loaned him straight out to Alaves, which again kind of shows the way a loan system can work if you identify the talents correctly, and they get the minutes that they need to develop, which is something we've definitely said on this channel. So Sloth, what can you tell me about Samu and the type of striker that he is before we get into the statistics?
Well, you mentioned he's 6'4", and I think it's very key to highlight that. I think about 5 foot of that is his legs. He has got a massive stride, and when he gets going, he's near impossible to stop it. And as we mentioned, he is 6'4". He's a big, physical, muscular unit, and he looks to turn past the defenders, and they just get absolutely gallop into the space. He is a little bit raw. I think that's the best way to put it, as most 20-year-olds will be. And being at Alaves, he's not exactly in a side that is the most free-flowing. So when we look at some of his overall stats later on, we'll go into a bit more detail about why they can be a bit deceptive. Yeah. But I think the key assets are that in the physical sense, he fits exactly what we would like up front, and in his playing style, in the fact that he likes to run with the ball, take on defenders, turn them, and use his physicality and his pace. It's exactly the sort of player that we've needed up top. And I made the comparison yesterday. Someone called me out and said, I, in my opinion, he's perfect for a Lopetegui system. They kind of asked me why, and I said, well, we know that Lopetegui was looking at Michail Antonio, and one of the best ways to kind of compare him or explain him to West Ham United fans who maybe haven't seen much of him is that he's very much like Antonio in the rawest sense, in the fact that when he first joined and he was more of a winger and he was just blistering pace all the time, constantly looking to take people on, and every so often he'd have a touch that would go, it would spoon off him or something like that. But it's about the work that he puts in and how much he carries the ball when he does get it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, let's take a look at some of those statistics and why some of them are a little bit skewed, and what we can provide context for. So this is the first ones around kind of his shooting. You see there, goals. It looks like he's kind of average in terms of the other top five strikers in the top five European leagues. So for someone that's 20 years old and they've managed to score 9 goals in their return there, it's a very healthy return for someone at that stage of his career. You can see there that he's taking around 3 shots per game, 1 in 3 of those roughly on target. The average shot distance of around 13 yards. So he's not someone that's going to be smashing the ball from 30, 35 yards a lot of the time. A lot of his goal contributions have come from inside the box. Again, similar to someone like Mikel Antonio when he tries to blast one from 35 yards and it ends in row Z. So that's a nice little comparison. So yeah, then we've got this one, which is also showing kind of his passing. Again, there's a little bit more context here to explain, isn't there? Because the way he operates and the way Alaves play isn't necessarily going to have ridiculous passing stats for that type of player.
Yeah, absolutely. Alaves is not a team that dominate possession, look to kind of be patient, have slow build up. They will play on transition. They are a team that maybe don't have the ball as much as others in La Liga. So he is ultimately going to have less involvement in build up. When they do try and use him, they try and use him more to kind of build off of, to kind of play the knockdowns, to maybe kind of put the ball into his chest, etc. And then kind of use that then to play and kind of build. They're not really using him as that focal point to kind of have intricate passing. Think of like how Man City use Haaland, the best possession team in the world, who very rarely use their centre forward. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they can't pass or because they don't have the quality. It's because what's more important is keeping that player within the confines and the boundaries, like the width of the 18-yard area, and keeping them centrally. And by having a player that you keep predominantly in that position and limit, but in a correct way, their involvement means that they are going to have far more opportunities in which to explore space, in which to make a run in behind off of a player. And it means that they can be more involved from a kind of attacking space point of view and trying to penetrate behind through their runs than actually trying to do intricate kind of passing sequences to kind of create an opening.
Yeah, and I think as well what you mentioned, Slough, about the type of player he is, someone that wants to progress with the ball when he gets it and looks to take people on. I think this also shows that, in terms of the possession statistics, you can see the ones that stand out there. So he's someone that's going to attempt take-ons when he gets the ball, 2.5 per game, which is pretty high in comparison to other strikers. And also the successful take-on. So, of those 2.5, he's completing one of them. And then, carries into the penalty area as well. Someone that's looking to carry the ball into that box and, make something happen from himself. And, not necessarily, he wants to get into those areas and then progress with it, and not necessarily just be fed the whole time. So once he realizes there's a space to run into, he's going to be that type of player to, as you say, use his physicality and use his attributes to do that.
Exactly. And I think when you look at maybe some of his link-up stats and the passing data, I think it can be quite deceptive when you're such a young player. You've got so much room to develop, and if you think about how he could transition that into coming with players like Bowen and Kudus, people who, with all due respect to Alaves, they don't have that same level of winger or attacking mid, and the ability to link up with them, learn off them, train with them every day, and see how they're going to play is huge. It's something that I think he will win a lot of aerial duels, and he will put himself about, especially if he's learning off Mikel Antonio. If they're on the training ground every day and he can see what Antonio does, then that's also going to be a massive bonus for him. And I'm not saying Antonio is the ultimate in that role, but for so many seasons he's thrived in that sort of player who will run the channels and create those chances, but he uses his physicality to do so. Mm-hmm. And when you have someone who's much taller and gives you a different element on top of that as well, I think utilizing that is also going to be something that is massive for us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it's definitely an interesting link. I think we've been linked with a few different strikers now, and they are not too far off in terms of the types of strikers that we want to go after. And it looks like we're trying to get pace in and around the striker, the focal point. With obviously Gilherme, other links that we've had to wingers out on that left hand side and on the right hand side. So again, as you mentioned, when you've got players like Kudus and Bowen, they'll just feed off that type of striker. It's less important that they're, creating loads of chances or be involved in the passing. As you said, Mike, you bang on with the Haaland comparison. How many passes does Haaland average a game? It's ridiculously low. Yet he's consistently the top goal scorer in the Premier League because of the players that are around him and the quality he has normally inside the box. So again, with Lopetegui's system, I think that's what he wants. He wants that focal point. And as you alluded to earlier, Sloth, there's a reason he wanted Antonio a couple of years ago when he was at Wolves. It's that type of profile. So it's definitely an interesting link to Samu. Yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Would you be on board with this move? And yeah, before we end, lads, out of 10, what would you rate this transfer if we could pull it off?
If we can pull it off, I think it's a very strong 8 or 9 because potential-wise, he could be phenomenal. And with this slight resurgence we're seeing of these big centre forwards, and I mean big centre forwards who are also incredibly quick as well, like Sesko, who is potentially going to one of the top teams in the UK. We've also got Holland currently playing. It seems to be a resurgence in these big, strong, incredibly quick centre forwards.
Osimhen as well with Napoli.
Yeah, Osimhen as well. Yeah, true. It seems like that is starting to come back in, and having these players that can be this focal point, but also just this in-box kind of crasher who is just going to get on the end of crosses, cause mayhem, and essentially create space. Think of what, at times, the amount of space Andy Carroll created because teams had to put 2 or 3 players on him. It's that kind of thing. And I think it would be a strong 8 or 9, especially if he can reach his potential and perform as he did for Alaves as well last year.
Sloth, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I really rate it. I think the price is potentially something that might worry people. I think we can probably look to take a bit of that off if Aguerd is moving to Atletico. But I think that's ifs and buts. However, I think if we can get him for around 30 or so million, that's a really smart deal, I think, with the potential that he has. If we then also were to pick up someone like En-Nesyri for the bargain price that he's rumoured at, we've potentially fixed our striking options, and we've got someone who's a bit more experienced and a very similar sort of physical profile to help him as well, take a bit of the pressure off. I think that's my only real worry about it, is the pressure that he'll be under and the price potentially. But it would be a very, very good move for us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that pressure point is key. It depends if Samu's to come in and we're having Samu and Antonio as our striking options next summer and we move on Ings. I feel like that's a little bit too much to ask of someone like Samu, because we don't really want to rely on Antonio too much going forwards, and we need to have that striker that's going to be able to consistently play, and Antonio almost is the backup. Whether Samu fits that model right now, I'm not so sure. I think it's someone that could potentially explode, like you say, in 2 or 3 years with the development, but it might not necessarily be the best fit in terms of how Lopetegui is structuring this team right now for West Ham. But be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, let us know in the comments down below what you think of the move, if it was to happen. And yeah, if you enjoyed the breakdown, leave a like on the video. As always, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are new around here. And lads, until the next one,
come on, you irons.